Plunk Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and Tyler the Creator is getting canceled. Oh my god, oh no, not Tyler the Creator. He's my favorite man. What music am I gonna listen to? So yeah, just in case you guys have not been on the internet for the past 48 hours or so, Tyler the Creator fans have been having a bit of a rough time, mostly because he is getting dragged left and right, not just for past statements and tweets that he's posted, lyrics that have turned up on older albums of his and his discography that, tended to run much edgier than the records he drops these days. I mean, have you seen some of those like old Odd Future bars? They were kind of
honey on that topping. When I stuff you in my system, la la. Ready, bit. Tell my friend I had a threesome. Oh la la la.
Nuts. Anyway, it's very interesting to see a lot of this discourse unfold because clearly there are at least some Tyler the Creator fans today who are maybe newer to him and his catalog, and as a result, they're just not really fully aware of the things he used to say and the lyrics he used to write. Either that, or they are now looking at that time period with more mature 2020 vision and thinking, hold on now, wait a second. Now look, I'll say from my own personal experience.
Right, but this is what I'm gonna have to say on this situation. It's like, okay, whether you're new or old, it's like, just let that breathe in the back. Let the coochie breathe in the back, bro. Why you gotta bring that up? Like, oh, has he said it since then? No. There are as many of interviews where the man has sat down and said, you know what? I don't do that anymore. I don't talk about that stuff anymore. That was when I was a kid. I was, you know what I mean? We can all agree that he was less mature. And even back then, someone like me, looking at Tyler's behavior, quote unquote, lyrics and stuff, I was never a big fan of him back in the day. It's only after when albums like Cherry Bomb came out and things like that I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Why is it interesting? Because he's like singing and being melodic and being more vulnerable. You know what I mean?
As somebody who was an active music reviewer during this point in time, a lot of those older Odd Future and Tyler records, in my opinion, were like really not that good. Or in my opinion, they just like have aged horrendously. And on top of that, at the moment that Odd Future was like first blowing up and becoming the hot music media commodity that they were for a number of years, it was very, very, very difficult covering and talking about their stuff, even positively, frankly, because a lot of the time when I would talk about Tyler's or the collective's music, it often would come with like insane waves of hate and harassment, unlike the coverage I would do at the time for any other artist. And this goes beyond your average angry music fandom mob reaction. There were moments in like my YouTube back catalog where all these little Odd Future fans were literally throwing swastikas in my comments over the fact that they knew I was in an interracial relationship. Like, shit was nuts. Put on top of that the sort of stuff Tyler used to say about fellow musicians and artists on a regular basis on Twitter, and all the non-stop headlines about him constantly day in and day out. Like, around the time Tyler really was like a scourge of the internet. However, that time is mostly gone. And these days when I cover Tyler's music or I see discourse around his music, the reaction.
But this is that thing that you have to understand of him understanding what it means to be in the limelight. Him understanding that you have to be a provocateur. You know what I mean? He because at the end of the day, that's what sells records. That's what gives headlines. And I'm not saying that like you have to be like it's the end all be all, but it definitely helps. Like you could just be a nice person and sell records too. We're not saying that you can't do that, but I think for some people it's like some people just believe that that's what I have to do. I have to say things that are sort of controversial and shocking, or else then I'm not going to be relevant. You know what I mean? Shout out to Kanye.
Is much more sensible. It seems like his fan base has done a lot of changing and maturing and growing, and when you actually look at the man's art, and I think this is apparent to a lot of people, he has done a lot of changing and growing too. And it's interesting because I think that change and that growth is what has caused a lot of people, when they are going back and looking at his old stuff and maybe catching some of these old tweets he posted.
I hate Digimon. Why do I have still always pay homage to our heroes? That. Oh, there it is, boys. And I'm currently mad right now but in 2 weeks we'll be over it because you really don't care. Cool. Hashtag no right. There it is.
Back in 2012, 13, 14, it's causing them to just be straight up shocked because they're thinking like, whoa, this is my favorite artist. This is one of my favorites right here saying this. This does not align with my perception of the person I am such a big fan of now. And I will admit, even as someone who has been covering Tyler and his music for a long time, there are some images and pieces of information like coming to light that I wasn't even aware of because even though I was aware of Odd Future, I wasn't like in the Odd Future trenches like a fan. So to be honest, I was not, stumbling across photos of Tyler in what seems like Ku Klux Klan robes. And for a lot of people stumbling.
Come on, man. Come on.
Across this discourse and sort of like, adding to this the fact that there were some offensive images that were incorporated in, early Odd Future merch and stuff like that. It's like all sending a very strange message at certain angles, not because the reappropriation and recontextualization of offensive symbols is wrong or inherently bad for an artist to do, but it's clear the implementation here actually lacks the satirization and the context that would actually educate people on these symbols in a way that actually communicates their history and their impact and their significance instead of potentially desensitizing people to them. I'm not here to say who should and should not be offended by any of this, especially as a white person. Let's rewind for a second though, because seemingly a lot of this discourse is over a tweet, it appears. Not a tweet Tyler twote or retwote, but liked. And it says, Tyler's fan base hates
music despite Tyler himself having a very deep love and appreciation for it. Charlie Wilson, Erykah Badu collaborate and they still produce engagement on a meaningful level. Very commonalistic. I wonder why Tyler hates his fan. Why? Because Tyler's fan base hates black music. I mean, the majority of people who rock Tyler the Creator are white. So. But that's not to say that they necessarily hate it. I think if you're using the word hate, I think that's a very strong rhetoric there. Because if you look at another person that could fall into the same thing was, who was it? I think it was Her. Remember when Her was doing, I think she was doing some sort of festival, and then she got really like PO'd about the fact that the majority of the fans in the crowd were all white. But I mean, we could really talk about the fact that most of the time when the artist does become mainstream, the crowds more and more fill up with just more of the fairer skin type people. Now we can get into discussion about socioeconomics, we can get into the discussion about disposable income, we can get into there's many different roads we can turn down to really sort of validate this idea that artists in the mainstream, most of their fans are white. Yeah, we could get into this whole thing, but I think just to keep it simple, just the idea that Tyler's entire fan base hates it, I think that's kind of stupid. I think as a whole, just to be like, oh, my fan base, because now I'm making a lot of money, they hate black music or don't like black associated things. I think that's just a rhetoric that is offensive and very dismissive to a lot of people, when in the trenches of all those fairer skinned people, there is the darker shade in there amongst them who do enjoy this and do understand where Tyler is getting all of his sort of motifs from. If you look at something like Chromatopia or Igor, those are all stemming and pulling from black culture as a whole. So to say that someone's like, oh, I love Igor, I love Chromatopia, and then they say, oh, I don't like black, that's stupid.
Black music, despite Tyler himself having a very deep love and appreciation for it. The dude has Charlie Wilson, Erykah Badu, DJ Drama, etc. collaborations, and they still refuse to engage with black art on any meaningful level. Very cannibalistic. And again, Tyler liked this tweet, presuming that he must have, felt this person was saying something valid, voicing a valid criticism. And the responses to this were not great, because it caused a lot of people to recall, aren't things with your fan base that way because you're not really challenging them and maybe instead making them feel comfortable with certain biases around race through comments you have either made in your music or in interviews in the past. And going back to some of these interviews and tweets, some of which at the time I did my best to avoid because, again, I'm sure a lot of older people will recall, but I will say personally, as somebody who had to cover Tyler's music and stuff on a regular basis, this 2012 to 2014 period was just constant Tyler Odd Future inundation. And it was just so dense that you really could be fucking consuming Odd Future related content all day. And yeah, again, many of them have not aged well and honestly weren't really a good look at the time, but I feel like one of the only reasons Tyler skated by was because, again, he was so young when he was saying a lot of this stuff, and people chalked a lot of his behavior up to just kind of acting out and misbehaving and just not really knowing how to conduct himself in the limelight. That's kind of the thing. I feel like we need to at least a little bit appreciate the fact that Tyler's career and his position on the music scene is just so amazingly unique, because not only did he blow up so young, but he did so in such a way to where it's clear he had so little in terms of any sort of filter or control or curation being put over him, preventing him from stepping on these figurative rakes over and over and over. Instead,
I think it's important to understand that, maybe he could have been young, quote unquote, but I think more or less, you have to appreciate the fact that somebody was able to come into the game like that and just say what they wanted to say. They didn't have to be this sort of cookie cutter artist that has the media training and knows how to not rattle people and create debates. And I think just as a whole, I think that's stupid, and I think that's most likely why Tyler was able to get the fame and traction that he was able to have, because he was so genuinely himself. It's important to just be you. When you're you, it's better. It's more freeing. It's more freedom. Just be yourself. If you're somebody who crashes out, then by God, crash out. You know what I mean? If you're somebody who seeks justice and you seek the truth, then by golly, then be that. Better to be hated for who you are than to be liked for who you're not. That's the true aspect of it. You know what I mean? Don't sugarcoat anything that you're doing for somebody else. Just tell it like it is. Do it like it is, because at the end, you only got one life. So just do it. Just do it. Ah!
Instead of playing it careful and thoughtful, these offensive elements of his personality and his worldview were instead just like made his brand. And yeah, again, like it wasn't great. And again, my feelings on much of this is echoed in my reviews of his work at the time, because, you know, who is a Tyler without the context around Tyler? With that being said, though, with this discourse kind of dying down a little bit now over the weekend, the question is like, where do we go forward from here? Because again, clearly a lot of people are kind of like shocked and looking at Tyler a different way now that they are kind of like, you know, seeing a lot of this stuff for the first time. And I'll remind people once more, like, I'm not here to say who can and can't be offended at any of this, or, you know, make whatever choice they want to make in terms of whether or not they continue to engage with what Tyler does from here. But it is still clear as fucking day that this man, the man that we see today, the man who just, you know, dropped "Don't Tap the Glass," that is so very clearly a different man that we knew when this guy was dropping Goblin.
Exactly the point that needs to be made. I think people's growth, when you're in the limelight, whether you start off as a young little buck and you grow up to be this more successful, more mature artist, I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Because when you really come to think about it, the people that are sort of attacking Tyler for the things that he said, those are the same people that if you go back on their Twitter or their Tumblrs and you look at some of the things that they said, and then you see them who they are today, a family man, going out to the lake, having barbecues with his family, you'd be like, damn, check this shit out though. What is that? Why did you say that? Why did you post that? You know what I mean? So it's just the fact that he's more under a microscope than most. So that's why people think, oh, because we are the ones who are, you know, we gave him the notability and we gave him the notoriety, then now we can knock him off a peg. When realistically you can't. But they'll believe so, but you can't. It's like, look at your own lives first before you turn around and start attacking someone and be like, oh, yo, that's crazy. What you're doing is, you know what I mean? Like, that's really how people have to look at it, because if you don't look at it from that light, it's like, then nothing anybody does as a human being is excusable. And what we have to be from the moment we're birthed is we have to be mature adults. When it's like, that's not how human growth works. You go through the missteps, you go through those points where you're saying the crazy things, and then you eventually become this mature person who understands what it means to control himself. And with that, make sure you watch another one of my videos somewhere here that just popped up. I'll catch you in the next video. Click on that one. Click on that one. Click on that one. It's nice. It's nice.